The auditorium lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd as if the entire world had paused for a single breath. The banners of the graduating class swayed gently from the ceiling, and in the back row, where shadows clung like old memories, a tired man in a cleaned but worn janitor uniform stood completely still, clutching 2 white roses that trembled in his rough hands. His eyes shone with pride and exhaustion, but beneath that pride lived a quieter truth he never spoke aloud. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. But the moment he rolled up his sleeves to dab his eyes with the back of his wrist, a tattoo, once bold, now faded, slipped into view. And somewhere across the auditorium, a decorated USMC captain caught sight of it, and froze in place as if he'd seen a ghost. It hadn't been an easy road for Nathan Reed, a single father who worked the night shift as a school janitor and picked up odd jobs on weekends just to provide for his twin daughters, Lily and Emma. Life had taught him the art of silence, the discipline of sacrifice, and the quiet strength of carrying burdens no one else knew about. Years ago, he served in a special Marine unit, but a mission gone wrong had cost him not only his military career but also a part of his soul. He had walked away from everything, determined to raise his daughters alone after losing his wife to a late-night road accident while he was still deployed overseas. Ever since then, he worked in the same school his daughters attended, emptying trash cans, mopping halls, and repairing broken lockers, yet he never once complained. If anything, every swipe of his mop, every night spent cleaning up after students, reminded him of why he kept going, to give Lily and Emma a chance at the life he never got to finish. On the surface, Nathan was invisible. People walked past him without truly seeing him, teachers nodded politely but never stopped long enough to notice the lines carved into his face from years of grief and responsibility. Students sometimes stared at the tatters of his boots or whispered about how he always arrived before dawn, as if he lived in the shadows of the school walls. But the truth was that Nathan had made peace with being unseen. Life had taught him long ago that glory wasn't found in medals or uniforms, it lived in the small, quiet acts of love no one noticed. And raising his twin girls was his greatest quiet achievement. As graduation day approached, Nathan spent nights sewing loose hems on the girls' dresses, polishing their shoes, and pressing their gowns with careful hands. His daughters didn't know how many extra hours he had worked to fund their application fees, textbooks, and final year expenses. They didn't see him eating leftover cafeteria meals or skipping medical checkups to save money. They didn't know he slept only 3 hours a night. But he didn't want them to see any of that. The world had already taken enough from them, he refused to let it take their childhood dreams too. That morning, before leaving for the ceremony, Nathan paused in front of the small framed photograph of his late wife resting on the kitchen counter. He whispered that their daughters were about to graduate with honors. He whispered that he wished she could be there. He whispered that he hoped he had done enough. Then he grabbed the 2 white roses, put on his uniform shirt, which he had washed so many times that the fabric had grown thin, and walked out with a quiet dignity. The auditorium was overflowing with proud families, excited seniors, and flashes from cameras capturing milestones. Nathan walked through the crowd with a humble gait, trying to stay unseen, but he couldn't hide the depth of emotion twisting through him. Every step reminded him of the battles he had fought silently for 18 years. Every face reminded him of how far his daughters had come. He found a place near the back, where he usually chose to stand, believing he didn't deserve to sit among the parents who lived brighter, easier lives. There, he watched the stage with the intensity of a man who had waited his entire life for a single moment. But as he lifted his hand to wipe his tears, the sleeve of his uniform slipped down. That's when the tattoo appeared, an old USMC insignia, marked by a special division symbol only a few carried. And somewhere near the front, Captain Marcus Hale, one of the highest-ranking Marine officers in attendance, stopped breathing for a moment. He knew that symbol. He knew the names of the men who once bore it. And he knew one name in particular that he had believed was gone forever, Nathan Reed, a Marine who had once pulled an entire squad out of an ambush during a classified operation but disappeared after the incident that left scars deeper than any wound. Marcus stared at him, stunned, unable to move or blink. That tattoo wasn't just a mark, it was a story etched into skin. A story of sacrifice, bravery, and a man who had been listed as medically retired and then quietly slipped away from the military world. Marcus had spent years wondering what became of him. Seeing him now, standing alone, wearing a janitor uniform, hit him like a punch to the chest. Marcus felt his throat tighten as he realized how life had pushed this man into the shadows. While the captain stood frozen, Nathan had no idea he was being watched. He focused solely on the stage as his daughters stepped forward to receive their diplomas. His heart swelled with such pride that it nearly hurt. He remembered tying their shoelaces before kindergarten, patching up scraped knees, attending every school play even from backstage with a mop in hand. He remembered the nights when he silently cried in the dark because he feared failing them. But here they were now, strong, brilliant, and stepping into a world he hoped would treat them kinder than it treated him. Lily looked radiant, her eyes sparkling as she walked across the stage. Emma appeared confident, her chin lifted slightly as though carrying the strength of both her parents. Their cheeks glowed under the lights, and Nathan felt a lump rise in his throat. These weren't just diplomas, they were the culmination of every sacrifice he had ever made. But the real shift began moments later, when Marcus finally stood up and quietly made his way to the back where Nathan stood. He stared at the man who had once saved his life, a man who had disappeared only to reappear in the most unexpected of places. Marcus's chest tightened with respect and disbelief. He approached slowly, unsure of what to say, unsure if Nathan would want to be recognized. But he knew one thing for certain, a hero wasn't going to walk out of this graduation unseen. Nathan finally noticed someone standing beside him, tall and rigid in dress blues, the ribbons on his chest catching the dim light. He recognized the uniform instantly and instinctively straightened his posture. For a moment, he felt that old Marine instinct rise in him, but he quickly lowered his gaze. He assumed the captain simply needed to pass by. But Marcus didn't move. He remained still, studying the man whose presence had once shaped his life. Nathan raised his eyes, confused, and their gazes locked. And in that instant, decades of buried memories and unspoken gratitude came crashing back. Marcus had been just a young lieutenant back then, inexperienced and optimistic. Nathan had been one of the older Marines, a man of few words but unshakable courage. During a mission that had spiraled into chaos, Nathan had dragged Marcus out of the line of fire, shielding him with his own body and then directing the surviving team members to safety. Marcus had never forgotten it. He had tried to track him down after the mission, to thank him, to honor him, but Nathan had vanished into civilian life, refusing recognition. Now, standing in the back row of a high school auditorium, Marcus saw him again, not as the war hero he once was, but as a father who had chosen a life of humility to raise his daughters with dignity and love. Marcus's voice trembled when he finally spoke, not loudly, but with a quiet reverence that shook Nathan to the core. And in that moment, something inside Nathan cracked open. For years, he had carried the weight of believing he wasn't enough, that he had failed his family, that he didn't deserve respect or acknowledgement. But now, a decorated officer stood before him with gratitude written all over his face. Nathan's knees almost buckled as he tried to respond. He wasn't used to being seen. He wasn't used to someone calling him by the name he used to wear proudly. He wasn't used to the world remembering who he once was. Tears welled up in his eyes despite his attempt to hide them. But before either of them could say anything more, Lily and Emma turned to scan the crowd, and when they saw their father standing beside a Marine captain, their expressions shifted from curiosity to realization. They had known he served. They had known he left the military after their mother died. But they had never understood the depth of his past, the meaning of the tattoo, the sacrifices he made before they were even born. Seeing another Marine approach him with reverence, seeing their father stand tall, even in his worn uniform, changed something inside them. In that moment, they realized their father had lived an entire life of honor before sacrificing everything for them. After the ceremony ended, Market